Hi, I'm Rebecca, and you are listening to episode 6 of Design Curious Podcast. Today, I have an interview with Tracy Dyck of S3 Interiors, and you're going to love the wide range of topics that we discuss. Tracy had a very traditional path into interior design, so it's fun to explore that. She also does both residential and some commercial. She definitely has a niche towards sustainable design, and we talk about even doing a straw bale house that she did for herself. I just found that really fascinating, so you might as well. And if you're into sustainable design or have curiosity about it, it'd be definitely worth reaching out to Tracy to talk more about that. So let me tell you a little bit about Tracy. Her love for solving puzzles of how people's spaces interact led her to a career in interior design. She received a bachelor's degree from Louisiana State University and is NCIDQ certified. She founded S3 Interior Design in 2003 with the goal of building a company that would not only make a positive impact on the industry, but also the community and the environment. After working on all aspects of building the business and leading design projects, Tracy has since directed her focus on business development and leadership support. Her mission is to continually improve the client and team experience. Beyond work, Tracy loves spending summers at the lake and traveling, as well as spending time with her husband Kevin and their 2 amazing daughters. So let's get into our interview with Tracy today. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. Hi, Tracy. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. It's such a delight to have you.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for asking me to join you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's hear a little bit about what your company is and where you're located even.
Sure. I own an interior design firm that's called S3 Interior Design. And we are located in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So for those of you who haven't been north of the US border, we're in the middle of Canada, kind of right above, well, think about North Dakota, and we're directly north of that. It gets really cold in winter and really hot in summer. So super fun.
Great. And how long have you had your company?
I started S3 in 2003, actually, which has nothing to do with the threes. That wasn't intentional at all. But yeah, so I guess we'll be having our 20th anniversary next year. So it's been a long time.
That's exciting. You should celebrate.
I know. It all of a sudden snuck up on me and I went, you're right. We should have like a 20th anniversary party next year.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I'll come up for it.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. We won't do it in January.
Yeah. Great. And so what does the S3 stand for?
That's a good question. So when I started the company, it stood for spaces, surfaces, and swatches, which kind of defined a lot of what what an interior designer works with. Over the years, it changed and grew, and now it stands for Smart Sustainable Spaces.
I like
that.
So
we took it a little bit different. Definitely have a passion for a sustainability direction with what we do, and so it's more fitting now than what it was back then.
Great. Okay, so why don't you give us a brief description of how you got into interior design? Like, where did you start as a young designer?
Okay. So this is my fun story from when I was a kid. I don't remember how old I was. I'm guessing I was early school years, maybe 7 years old or so. I only know this because my mom still has the proof. I designed my first bedroom when I was about 7 years old. I did a whole plan. I don't think it was to scale, but I drew a plan. And it was based on I Dream of Jeannie's bottle. So if you remember I Dream of Jeannie, I'm dating myself a little bit.
Yeah, I
She
watched
had
it.
this bottle, with the couch that went all the way around the outside of, when she went in there, and it was all like upholstered and really cool. And so my bedroom was based on that bottle. And so I had like a circular bed, and
Wow.
I had drawn it all up, and I gave it to my mom, and she kept it and gave it to me when I was an adult.
Wow.
And so that was kind of my first kick at interior design, I think. Then it progressed probably to, playing with Barbies. The Barbies were fine, but I had less enjoyment from actually playing with the Barbies as I did like creating their spaces. So whether it was taking cardboard boxes and making them houses or apartment buildings, and then finding scraps of like carpet and material and making, flooring and window coverings and getting furniture. And that was the thing I really loved about Barbies.
Mm.
So that was probably the second indication of where my career might go. And then I would say the third one was I used to take the Sears catalog, and I would cut out like all the interior furniture and decor pictures and then make collages of like different concept boards and things like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
pretty good key indicators, I think, it was inside you as a young person.
you're right. I think it was pretty much predestined. But funny thing is, I actually, after all of that direction, kind of diverted from the path after I was finished high school. It was still in my brain. I knew it was a passion of mine, but I didn't know if I was going to make it a career. So after high school, I did a year of sort of entry, first year university, and then decided that actually I was going to try social work. I had spent a couple of summers working as a camp counselor and really enjoyed working with the kids and thought that might be a good career path. So I enrolled in university, got accepted into the program of social work, started in September, and the university that I was attending went on strike that fall in November. And basically, they said, if you want to drop your courses, we'll let you drop your courses and we'll give you a full refund for your tuition.
Wow.
And I went, all right. I was not enjoying the social work program at all. And so I said, nope, I would drop out. And and then I stopped kind of post secondary education at that point and went to work for a while, got married, and then a couple of years later, got really excited about interior design and went back to school, went to university, and did did about a 4-year program between. I did some in Winnipeg, and then I actually moved down to the States for a couple of years and lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and finished my degree at Louisiana State University.
Wow, that's quite a story. What do you think is the reason why you didn't decide to go into interior design right out of high school?
Yeah, good question. I think part of me had a preconceived notion of what interior design was. And I think my preconceived notion was that the only purpose for interior designers was to do really fancy interior design for really wealthy people.
Mhm.
And not that that's a bad thing, but for me, I didn't know whether I wanted that to be what my career was going to be about.
Mhm.
And so I really wanted to do something where I could help people. And I didn't at that time see necessarily how those things went hand in hand.
Mhm.
And so I struggled with that. And I now realize that there is a lot of really positive things interior designers and designers in general do for people to improve their lives and
Mhm.
to make a really positive impact. And that's something that I've just learned after being in the industry for years, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, do you think that your time, briefly in the social work aspect was kind of I could see how that could maybe gear you towards like, how can I help people? And then maybe later on being like interiors is the avenue that I can help people as well. So like there's a part of you that really wanted to do that social work and like help people improve their lives. But I definitely see interior design as a way to do that for some people, mentally, emotionally helping them.
Yeah, I don't think many people realize how important the interior environment is to your mental health, to your physical health, to a lot of things for a lot of people. And there's also piece that can be really important to our planet. That's where I get really interested in the whole sustainability story. There's a way that, the built environment is a huge user of resources. And so if we can use our degrees and our gifts to do something positive as we plan what we're going to design, I think that's another way that we can help.
For sure. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that sustainable design. To what extent do you carry that into your design? Are you thinking of materials or how you're using or reusing materials that are coming out of a project and keeping them away from the dump or things like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. And it's something that I struggle with a lot. It's a hard thing in our industry because there's a lot of products that are sustainable. There's a lot of green elements that you can bring into a design. There's also a lot of greenwashing that happens. It's also difficult because a lot of times the more sustainable you want to be, the more it increases the price on a project.
Mm-hmm.
So clients don't necessarily want to pay a lot of money for something that has a specific certification to it. So you try your best to do all of the above, whether it's selecting, if you have a choice between two materials and one has a really strong sustainability story, trying to convince the client to go in that direction or insisting they go in that direction if you can. Being able to reuse what's there. I mean, the best way to keep things out of the landfill or to help our environment is to just reuse what we already have. And so being able to take some of the items that the client may say, hey, you know what, I don't want it anymore, either to be able to repurpose it in a new way that they hadn't thought of, or to be able to say, well, we'll find another home for it. That's something that we're really interested in doing more of, repurposing and giving new life to things. And then the other piece is I myself, 16 years ago, built a straw bale house. So my own home is sustainable. And so it was built, our exterior walls are actually straw bales.
Wow.
And so that's probably the biggest impact that I've been able to make is actually the home I actually designed and live in.
Wow. So how difficult was that to do straw bale construction?
Yeah, interesting. It's not that difficult. It's labor intensive. And it's unusual. So trying to find people that will partner with you in it is probably the hardest part. So we were really lucky to find a builder who had tackled a few straw bale structures. He hadn't actually built a house, but he had built other buildings like sheds and shops and things like that. He had taken courses down in, I think, Arizona to learn the strategies and how to build with bales. Where we live on the prairies in Manitoba, there's an abundance of straw. So the material is just right there at your fingertips. Mm-hmm. So that's truly sustainable because you don't have to go far to get it. It's literally in the field next door.
Yeah, zero footprint there.
Zero footprint, which is nice. And it's completely renewable, right? It just grows and grows and grows every year. Designing it was very much like a normal house, other than you had to think about, because your exterior walls, when they're all said and done, are about 22 inches thick. So you need to think about how much space that takes up on your property and on your interior. So you got to be cognizant of that. Mm-hmm. So I designed it very much like I would have designed a conventional home, but also keeping in mind not just the material of the walls, but what kind of solar gains that we were going to have from placement on the lot. So I was very picky when we picked a building lot as to what direction it faced, so that we could gain a lot of south-facing warmth, especially in our climate, and avoid north and west-facing, where you get a lot of really cold winds in the winter. Just being really strategic in how it was laid out, and then using really good materials to make it super energy efficient.
Wow. That is such a niche experience. And have you been able to replicate that for your clients, or found someone who is able to sign on for that type of house?
I would like to. I haven't actually designed a straw bale house for anybody else.
Okay.
I have talked to people who are wanting to build straw bale. One of the things about the straw bale community is it tends to be a very do-it-yourself community. And so people like to resource each other with information, but they tend to do all the hands-on work themselves. So it's a tougher community to break into if you want to have design fees associated with
it. Yeah. Wow. That's great. I'm going to keep that in mind just to learn a little more about that. That's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about the transition from design school to
Mm.
working in the career. Did you go directly to S3 or did you work for another designer?
About 9 months after I finished my degree, we moved back from Louisiana to Manitoba. I wasn't able to work in Louisiana because I didn't have a working visa. So we moved back to Manitoba and I took on a job with a local designer. She was independent, one person design firm. She focused purely on residential. Her niche was doing short, sort of 3 hour design consultations for her clients. So she was really going in there, picking paint colors, giving sketches for furniture layout, giving ideas for finishes. But she would be in and out kind of in 3 hours. And that's what she did. And so she was looking for someone to help her. She was hoping to move out of province and go live in a different city, but didn't want to close down her firm. So she hired myself and another fairly new designer to come and learn from her and then basically run her business. We did that. I learned a lot. You're basically having to think on the spot. So you are just, yeah, you have to be really quick on your feet. You have to be ready to give lots of advice.
Good under
And so I
pressure.
did that under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have time to go back to the office and think.
No.
So on one hand, it's really nice because you're kind of in, you're out, you're done, you got to check, you're good, right?
Right.
And people are super happy. Like they love getting a little really like good nuggets of information. So they were super happy. But a couple of years into it, a couple of things happened. One, I was getting burned out on that kind of repeat design vocabulary because when you're doing something so fast, you actually don't have time to be super creative. You kind of have to have an arsenal in your pocket and you just keep drawing from the same information over and over and you change it a little bit each time.
Oh, yeah.
And that wasn't feeling very life-giving for me. I also had my second daughter at that time. And so I went on maternity leave. And at that time, I decided that I would stop working for her. But when my second daughter turned about, was she 8 months old, something like that, I decided that I could do the kind of work that I had been doing with her on my own. I could just do it for as many hours as I wanted to a week. My thinking was if I could do like 10 billable hours a week while I had two little girls at home, that would be good. That'd be enough to make me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like a plan. And then, and then things started getting busier and busier and busier. And 10 hours a week wasn't 10 hours a week anymore, which is a good thing. Like it's a good problem to have. But then I also started developing the need to do more, to do bigger design and to really use the skills that I had gained through school. Like I wanted to be doing more interior architecture and less just surface cosmetics, because that's where my passion lay. I really like solving the puzzle. I really like space planning and the detail work and the construction thinking. I like that. And so that wasn't giving me enough, just doing the surface cosmetic stuff. So yeah, I just started evolving and doing kind of bigger projects. And it was scary at first because you're like, wow, like my plans are really going to be built. It's not just paint I'm picking anymore. So you feel like your liability goes up and the pressure is on, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see on your website that you also do commercial design. So did you have experience with that working for the other designer, or was that something that developed just organically on your own?
I had done a little bit of commercial design with the other designer. She had a relationship with kind of a government agency, which she would do a little bit of space planning here and there. It was a lot of, hey, we've got a 6,000 square foot floor plate and we've got X number of employees on it. We need to get 5 more employees in this corner. Can you rejig all the cubicles? So that was the kind of work I did with them, was just a lot of, again, figuring out the puzzle, right? So I did that for a couple of years as one of my contracts, and just slowly but surely got a few other commercial jobs. And then I actually brought on, as I started growing the business, I hired, a few designers, and one of them was someone who had spent her career working purely in the commercial realm.
Oh, okay.
And so she was very experienced in all types of commercial. She came from a pretty large architectural firm, but she was looking for something smaller and more intimate. She was also a mom with young children, and I offered her more flexibility than the big firm could.
Right.
And so she jumped on board with us, and I had her basically running the commercial department. And so I learned a lot from her. I also learned a lot when I wrote my NCIDQ exam, because all of a sudden you have to know commercial
Right.
more so than you know residential.
Yeah.
So that forced me to gain a quick bit of knowledge on the commercial side.
Yeah.
And then I was able to jump into it with this other designer who was working for me. So I learned a lot in those years.
That's great. Do you enjoy both of them equally or prefer residential more?
It depends. I think they're different. If you like a really intimate personal relationship with your clients, then residential is a great stream. If you like things that are a little bit more programmatic, where you're going to have someone who's not as invested in the design necessarily, because they're not necessarily the ones who own it, then commercial can be a really good realm. So I think there's benefits to both. At this point, I think our office likes dabbling in residential more than we focus on commercial. So we don't do a lot of marketing to our commercial side. That comes organically a lot of times, either from referrals or clients who have a business.
Right.
And then we do their house, and then we end up working on their office. And we streamlined our commercial. We used to do everything from hospitality to retail to government work to, private offices. And we streamlined that down to just corporate office, private offices. We try not to do the government work anymore. It's more paperwork than it is actual design work. So if you really like organizing and paperwork and administration, that's the job for you.
That's the area to specialize in.
Focus in on that. Yeah, you'll be super happy. But yeah, everybody in our office, the design team I have right now, I have one designer who's been with me for 13 years, and she really is passionate about residential. That's been her love since the beginning. So we do a lot of residential. And then I have an intermediate designer who likes both, but is really interested in commercial. So we try to get enough commercial projects that it fills her sweet spot as well.
How many employees do you have right now?
There are 5 of us in our office. That includes myself. So we have a senior designer, an intermediate designer, a junior designer, an office administrator, and then myself. I actually don't do a lot of design anymore. I stepped away from that role probably 4 years ago or so. I just had a team of senior designers who really could run the projects well at that time. And so I had to make a decision whether I was going to try to keep my hand in the design pot or whether I was going to move more into business development. And I found I couldn't do both.
Yeah.
It was just too hard. And so I picked a lane, and I've decided to stay in this one, and I'm happy there right now. I still get to get my creative passions filled by listening and talking to my designers and seeing what the projects are doing. But I truly believe that they are more creative than I am. So I'm happy to let them do what they are gifted at.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like you made some smart hires of people who are so talented that you can trust them to design under your name. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very blessed to have a great team.
Yeah. So thinking back over the course of your career, what would you say is the most challenging part of interior design? I know it's pretty broad, but
yeah, most challenging. For me personally, the most challenging part is dealing with the conflict that can arise when you're doing a project. There's no such thing as a project that will go perfectly. There's always going to be a problem that arises. Always. It's guaranteed. It's 100%. How you deal with it is what makes, separates I think, a good company from maybe a mediocre company. I find conflict and jumping into it is not my nature. I like to avoid it when I can. But that's been something as the owner, as the business developer, as the person who is the final person on the chain of command. When something goes wrong, it ends up on my desk.
Yeah.
As it should. And I have to be the person who steps in when a client is frustrated or angry, or like I say, something's gone sideways. And I've just had to learn from that. And it's good. It's a good learning and growing experience, but I don't know that I'll ever be that person who's like thrives in like, can't wait to see that angry person today.
Right.
This is going to be great.
Conflict resolution expert.
Some people really do well with that, right? It's like a challenge that they just want to overcome, or a game that they play that, they love to win at. It doesn't feel that way for me. So that's probably, I think, my hardest thing as an interior designer that I face. Probably the other thing that's difficult is when you have, especially when you're doing residential, if you have partners who you're working with, so whether that's a husband and a wife or whoever you're working with that has decision-making power in the project, when they can't agree. Then you have to pull out your counseling hat, and you have to make sure that everybody feels heard. And I learned a while back that when you're in a meeting and the two parties clearly aren't seeing eye to eye, you have to make sure that each party gets enough points in the argument. Because if you give all the points, and what I mean by points is you agree with all the points that one party is making, you will lose the other party, and they will not be your friend anymore, and you're going to have a tough time working with them. So you have to make sure that each party feels like they've received their fair share of being heard.
Yeah.
So that nobody feels angry at the end.
Yeah. I think mediation and negotiating is definitely something that should be a prerequisite, something that they teach you in school, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because whether you're advocating for yourself, your design, or from one partner to another in selling that design or what their needs are, it's definitely learning to find that middle ground and make everybody agree to it, if not necessarily elated about the outcome, but everyone agrees that this is a good path to take going forward. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you were starting out way back when, was there anything that you wish you had known prior to getting into the career about interior design?
I think one of the very basic things I wish I had known is probably how to create a really good set of drawings. I think I learned a lot in school. I had some really good professors, and we did a ton of it in school. But when you get out in the real world, I needed to know what exactly was expected of me to hand over to a builder that would be useful for them. Exactly how detailed my floor plans needed to be, or my elevations, or my specifications. And I found that I did a lot of either searching online for packages that I liked, or I would talk to builders who I trust, and I would say, hey, are you working with any other designers? Would you mind sharing with me, something that you've built off before that was really a good set? So that was something that I wish I had been given a little bit more of a better outline of what a good set of drawings are. And I find that a good set of drawings are they're like art, to be honest. Like, to be able to create drawings that are complex enough to give all the information, but simple enough that they can be easily followed. That's a balancing act, and it takes a long time. I think we're still, like 20 years later, I'm still like, our team is revising and going, hey, we could do it this way and it would be better. So that's one thing that I wish I would have been given. The other thing that I often tell students, and maybe you're going to ask this question next, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but if you're thinking of going into a career in design and you want to know some of the things that you might be able to do before you jump into the education or during the education, go build something. Spend a summer, find a friend or an uncle or a cousin or somebody that's in the building industry that'll let you work for them for a summer, and get on site. And even if you're the person who's running around handing them tools and cleaning up the job site at the end of the day. Watch what's going on. Even better yet, see if you can do some framing and pull some electrical wire and install some ceramic tile and put up drywall. The more you can do those things, the more you understand how a space goes together, and the better you will be at designing something that actually works. So that, to me, I learned that a lot when I built my own house.
Right.
I was really hands-on, and I learned a ton of things. And I was like, oh, this is why the builder always tells me that this detail doesn't work. I get it now. Like, I get why A has to meet with B in a certain way for it to connect or finish properly.
Right.
Someone in school always said, if you can learn how things connect, that is invaluable. So that is the advice I would give. Go out, get a job in construction, and build something for a few months or a few years.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I can see, because that was one of I felt like my weakest link starting out was that I didn't actually have any hands-on construction experience. And it was difficult to really see how the drawings became reality. And then I worked for an architectural designer for a while, and I had to draw some details for him, and just even like drawing those details that he'd tell me what to put where, and like this kind of hanger hangs off of this beam, and and those types of things. Like, yeah, I can understand it on paper, but then I go and see it in person, and then it clicked and it made sense. And so, yeah, any of that hands-on experience would be definitely advisable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it also allows you to have a language that you didn't have before. So when you go on site and you're talking to the trades or the general contractor, and you can speak a language that is mutual, you will feel a lot stronger about what you're talking about, and you will be respected a lot more highly on the job site. And especially a career that has a predominance of females in the design world, and a construction world that has a predominance of males. The more verbal you can be and the more well-spoken you can be, the more you will be respected for your craft.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, even things like floor joist or ceiling joist. I mean, we do run into those terms when we're dealing with the layout of the lighting and the registers, returns, and things like that. And you don't want to be on the job site asking, well, what is a ceiling joist? I mean, you'd look so incompetent, really. And so, but those are the things I feel like the actual architectural and construction details, they don't go over that in interior design school. At least they didn't much.
Yeah, it depends. I guess it depends what educational stream you're going. I know there are so many different ones. You can do education that focuses more on, I'll call it the cosmetics, like the surface treatments. So your finishes and fixtures and furniture. And then you can do things that are more architectural, right? I found that my degree, my first year, I had to take a technology degree. So it was all about building systems. And we spent a lot of time on those kind of things. So I felt like I got a basic grasp, but I think it depends what educational stream you take. And I think it's really important to know what your passion is before. That's the question I probably get from up and coming like high school students. Where should I go to school? What should I learn? What am I going to learn? And my first question is, what do you enjoy about design? Do you enjoy dealing with fabrics and finishes and color? So are you more on, I'll say, the decor end of things? Or do you really like space planning and the puzzle and structure? So more the architectural side of things. Like, which side of the spectrum do you enjoy the most? And that probably dictates what kind of education you want to get. Because if you're interested in all of it, then do an interior design program that focuses on that, or an interior architecture program. If you're like, I have no interest in space planning, no interest in technical, I want to know more about fabrics and furniture and those kind of things, then more of an interior decorating program would be appropriate. So yeah, figure out what, sort of lights you up, and then pick your education path that way.
Yeah, very good. And a lot of people that come to me asking for advice or mentorship are wanting to know, if they don't have any education, would they be able to still get into the field? And you and I both know that there are many designers out there who have not had a formal education and they've just jumped into it with the experience that they've had. So I think that's a possibility. Have you seen other designers like that?
Yeah, I have. That's a question I struggle with actually a lot. And probably if you would have asked me 2 years ago what my perspective on that, it would have been a lot stronger in one direction than it is now. Because I came from a background where I spent a lot of time on my education, like 5 years of university, and then I did practical work, and then I did NCIDQ. I firmly believe that to be able to call yourself a professional interior designer, you should do some type of formal training. And sometimes it can be frustrating when you hear of someone who has just decided they want to go into the career without any kind of education and still give themselves the same title. That feels a bit frustrating sometimes, but I've had to kind of let that go and gone, okay, you know what? Everybody has a different path, and there's no reason to get myself in a knot about it. I think if you're going to go into a path where you do have to do a lot of structural decision making, and you need to know code, I think you should take education very seriously, because you're dealing with life safety and you're dealing with important things that are more than just something that you have to guess at.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I think there is an opportunity to learn in the field, as with many careers, right? To be able to be mentored by someone, to be able to learn under someone, and to be able to then do that work. I think when you get into the decor end of it, it's more about a personal style and a passion. And there's education there too, don't get me wrong. Appropriate fabrics and appropriate methods of creating things for sure that you can learn in school, but I think it's a lot easier to learn those things as you go.
Yeah.
So sorry, you know what? I forget what the original question was. Have I answered it?
Yes. No, I was talking about whether formal education is necessary. And I definitely see, like, in the codes-based environment, whereas more with the decor, decorating, more surfaces, like that could be something that people could get into without necessarily a formal education. But yeah, that is a big discussion, even in other industries going forward. Like, how much is a college degree worth? And you have to take all the classes and get that degree to do the career. So that's just something that's being discussed all over the place. So thank you for all of your insight. Really good advice for everybody. Where can we go and see your beautiful portfolio?
You can go to our website. We are at s3interiordesign.com. And we also are on Instagram and Facebook. S3 will get you there.
Okay.
Yeah. So please feel free to check us out. And thanks again for asking me to come on today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracy. It's been a joy.
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Tracy. We covered a wide range of topics. I also loved exploring how the name of her company, although it started out as Spaces, Surfaces, and Swatches, then transitioned into Smart Sustainable Spaces. And I loved how the name of her company was able to transition that way. And that, we all change and develop over time. And I think Tracy's company is a great example of that, how you can start out thinking you're going in one direction, and then as you grow and learn, you might pivot and go towards another direction, but it's still authentic to you. It's still on brand. So that's Tracy's story. Feel free to reach out to her. We have her contact information in the show notes, which you can find on my website, rwarddesign.com, under the podcast page. And I'll leave off with this quote that Tracy has on her website, which I really love. She says, "I believe in a purpose bigger than myself. I believe in a God that provides us with gifts and opportunities to use them." So in essence, she is using the gifts that God gave her for her talents in interior design to help other people's lives. And I just love that. So have a great week and stay tuned to Design Curious Podcast to keep learning if interior design is the right career for you. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.